Yo, what is up guys? Cool412 the Fox here. And anyways, I want to welcome you to another exciting edition of Halloween Nightmare on Friday the 13th, Episode 2. Now, after the last episode on the first review, I want to thank everyone so much for tuning into that one, because that really meant a lot right now. With it still being spooky season, we're on to the next movie we're reviewing. And right now though, folks, this film, I think, has really made a lot of history in the 80s. And I am talking about A Nightmare on Elm Street, directed by the late great Wes Craven. And I feel that Wes Craven has really directed a lot of great films over the years, and yet he even directed the movie that came out on my birth year while in production in April in 1996, Scream. But man, all I could say is, with spooky season still becoming a big one yet, but another thing I could say is, folks, let's get to the review of A Nightmare on Elm Street. The movie starts us off at the opening of the film where we see someone grabbing a bag with everything of the materials he needs to make his trademark glove. And then we cut to the title card, A Nightmare on Elm Street. Then the film starts us off where we see Freddy playing moral mental mind games with Tina, who was trapped in a nightmare to start off the film. By the time she was looking around in her dream, that was where a sheep ran into the halls and scared her, running off into the boiler room. And yet Freddy was always very good at this type of thing, because in the film, I was kind of stunned at first to see all the moral mental mind games that Freddy did throughout the franchises, including the movie quotes he did. And still, by God, a lot of great moments throughout the Nightmare on Elm Street franchises to this day. But anyways, as Tina was cornered in the boiler room, Freddy came in from behind and grabbed her, but she woke up just in time when her mother checked up on her. She said it was just a dream. She said, well, a dream or not, even after having that, then she saw her pajamas cut. But I don't want to go into details on what happens in this film, just like I did with the other ones, just so that way at least I'm playing by the rules. So anyways, in part of the film, after Tina went back to sleep, she grabbed her crucifix. Then we cut to the school scene where we see a couple of schoolgirls, well, at least children, jump roping to Freddy's song. 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. 3, 4, better lock your doors. 5, 6, better grab your crucifix. 7, 8, stay up late. 9, 10, Freddy's back again. Because that's usually the trademark that was used throughout the entire franchise for years. But yet, Freddy, I think, was just one way of pointing out that he's the boogeyman of Springwood, and the man was the king of nightmares. But anyways, as we continue on the film, that's where we were introduced to the final girl of the film, Nancy. And yet, throughout the franchise, that was where Nightmare on Elm Street had a lot of great cast of characters, and yet the first film had Johnny Depp. And yet, it was amazing enough throughout the film that Johnny Depp was involved in the first film, and yet being a part of the franchise. Anyways, as the scene presses on, they're talking about the nightmares they had at school, while later on the next scene, they were all staying at Tina's place for the night. And yet Johnny Depp, I think, pulled off an amazing role throughout the film, pulling off some practical jokes, being a jokester and a comedian, while calling his mother on the phone about everything where he's staying at. And yet, don't mess with the boombox and change the section when you're on the radio or on the phone. But it was kind of funny to see that. But anyways, as it presses on in the film, that's when they start talking about the nightmares they had and talking about Freddy Krueger. And yet, Freddy Krueger was played by the king of horror movies, and I think one of the greatest legendary actors of all time, Robert Englund. And yet, whenever Robert Englund put on the makeup and played the role, the man knew how to perform. But the only thing I could say is Robert Englund is, I believe, one of the top legends in the history of cinema today. Anyways, as soon as they kept talking about the nightmares they were having, that's when they heard a familiar sound from the dreams. When they went to investigate, it was actually Tina's boyfriend playing a joke on them. And then, during that night, as everyone was asleep, Nancy was currently asleep. But then we see Freddy pushing himself through the wall, trying to get Nancy. But went back all of a sudden. But when Nancy woke up, the crucifix was right there, right next to her, realizing the situation. What's going on? But then Tina fell fast asleep and was already in her dreams until she started to hear Freddy's voice. When she went out to investigate the voice outside, that was when Freddy made his presence well known. Playing mind games as usual, and then in the scene Tina was asking God for help, but Freddy said in his famous quote from the very first film, "This is God." Then the chase was on. Freddy was chasing Tina throughout the alleyway back to the house, but Freddy had powers in the dream world. But when Tina got straight to the backyard, Freddy said, "Tina, watch this." But then he scared her, which led her to be scared out of her mind for what Freddy did, which I will not go into detail because, like I said, I'm trying to play by the rules. But anyways, as it got straight to the point, when Tina got to the house, it was already too late. Freddy got her, but in reality, she was being swung around all over the place, floating in midair, and Freddy took her out. But yet, that was when we cut to the police station, and they were trying to investigate what was going on. That Nancy was there with her mother, where she wanted to go home, but however, her father, which was the police officer, trying to find out what was going on and what the heck happened. So she went home the following night until we get to the next scene where she wanted to go to school, but her mother said, "No, I don't think it's a good idea after what you've been through." So she went until we cut into Tina's boyfriend trying to explain what happened and what was going on. And that was where, I remember the scene vividly, that's where she said to him was, "Well, it was locked from your side." And that's when he said was, "Don't look at me like I'm some kind of fruitcake or something. I'm warning you." And then the father was coming in from behind, doing his job as a police officer. And that's when he tried running, but Nancy stopped him. The boyfriend kept running until the cops caught him and was arrested on sight for the murder of his girlfriend, knowing he didn't do it. But anyways, we cut to the school where Nancy was trying to learn a lot at school, but then she fell asleep in class, leading up to where she see Tina in her dream. But when she was trying to go after Tina, she ran into what looked like to be a hall monitor, But from the looks of it, she was wearing Freddy's sweater, asking him where her pass was, but I didn't want to quote what Nancy said to her because, well, it's kind of what happened. And then Freddy's voice popped up and was just like, "Hey, Nancy, no running in the hallway." And yet, that was where the mind games began. As Nancy went to look for Tina, she was in the boiler room, and Freddy was right there in front of her, playing the same mind games as usual. That was when Freddy walked in, and Nancy asked, "Who are you?" But Freddy played more mind games to scare Nancy, and once again another chase was on. And that was when Nancy was cornered in the same spot Tina was in. And Nancy screamed out to him was, "It's only a dream." But Freddy had Nancy in his sights. Then she burned herself to wake up. But when it worked, the school teacher calmed her down. Because last I checked, the boiler room was actually kind of stunning to me. But it was scary, but brutal. It was probably too hot in there. That's probably why she woke up. But anyways, that was when we cut to where the school teacher said she was going to call her mother. It's okay now. But she said, "No, I'll just go home." By the time she was going home, she looked at her arm and realized whatever happened in her dream would happen for real. Then we cut to Tina's boyfriend explaining everything, having the same dream as everybody else. But that was when Nancy was stunned. So then that's when we cut to where I don't want to talk about the other scene because it's kind of a little inappropriate. So anyways, let's just say that Nancy fell asleep and Freddy tried to get her, but Nancy once again survived and tried to stay up all night. But that was when her boyfriend came in and she had a proposition that she wanted him to stay up and make sure that she was okay. But by the time she was running to Tina's boyfriend where he was, Freddy was right there looking up at Nancy. She tried screaming out to her boyfriend to make sure that he needed to wake her up, but it was too late. She tried running from Freddy, but Freddy, with his mind games as usual and his dream powers, he knew that he had her in his sights. When she ran to her room, the only thing Nancy kept saying was, it's only a dream, he's not real. It's only a dream, he's not real. But then Freddy jumped right through the mirror, and she woke up, thanks to her alarm clock. But when she caught her boyfriend asleep, she was unhappy and upset that day. But they ran immediately straight to the jail where Tina's boyfriend was. And like I said, I do not want to get into details on what happened. Kind of inappropriate. So anyways, when they got there, they were trying to get to the bottom of the situation, trying to wake him up. But overall, the father walked in, realizing the situation. When they tried to run to Tina's boyfriend's cell, it was already too late. Freddy got him, and he was done. But while at the funeral, that was where Nancy explained everything to her parents on what Freddy looked like, and description and details, but both parents were stunned and unhappy about the situation. So Nancy's mom went to get her help at the dream clinic. That's when she said was, "Couldn't there be medicine to keep you up all day and night?" But that was until I found out that the voice actor for Roger Rabbit was in the film, playing the part of the doctor. But I was very happy to see that, but it was really cool. anyways, when it got straight to the point where they were trying to find out what was wrong with her, that's when the doctor asked her mother, how long has she been having these nightmares for? And she explained it vividly after what happened. And then that was where Nancy started having her nightmare, but then she started screaming in her sleep, everything, and they pulled her out of the dream. That was when they tried to sedate her, put her back to sleep. She didn't want to go back to sleep, but that was where she found a hat that she pulled out of her dream. And her mother said, "Where did you get that?" She said, "I knocked it off his head." And then we cut straight to the other part of the scene where Nancy's mother was already frustrated about everything, trying to make sure her daughter was safe, and she demanded answers on who this guy was, aka Freddy. And then when she mentioned his name on the hat, her mother was upset and demanded to give the hat, but that was where things really got bad to worse. The parents, precisely, the father was at work, but the mother was not happy. And all she wanted was her daughter to go to sleep. But that was where she got mad and broke a glass and ran out the door to see her boyfriend. They had their talk. But when she headed home, she saw everything fenced up, sealed tight like security in the house. And then that was where Nancy's mother explained everything to her and showed Freddy's glove in the basement. Which I was stunned. I don't know how it got there, but it was pretty cool to see. But anyways, after explaining everything of what happened that day, and the only thing she said was, "Freddy's gone, he can't hurt you." But Nancy knew he's not gone. He's already invading their dreams and getting payback in his own way, it looks like. But in any other event, later that night, Nancy called up her boyfriend about everything. And that was where she told him not to go to sleep. Well, at least don't fall asleep. But then the parents of the boyfriend, the mother came in concerned for her son, wanting to make sure he went to sleep that night. And so yet, later on in the film, the parents outside were looking at Nancy up the window, but the dad was very, very strict. But the mother knew that Nancy's mom was trying to protect her to make sure she was safe, but Dad was, "I don't want that girl anywhere near our son." And I was like, well, that's a strict parent right there. But in any other event, later on in the film, Nancy tried to call up her boyfriend, but the mother picked up, was wondering what was going on, and the dad got involved and said "He's asleep, call back tomorrow." And then he took out the phone at the time and put it on the table, because what I saw was he picked up the phone, left it on the table to make it look like it was being blocked where no one can call. And from the looks of it, I believe that knowing the film took place in the 80s, this was an old school phone. But anyways, as we get straight to the other part of the scene, Nancy was getting upset and everything else when the phone was ringing. It was Freddy messing with the phone. And as it got straight to the point, when Nancy picked it up again, that's when Freddy said, "I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy." And she destroyed the phone and was irate. When she knew what she meant, he tried to run down to the house, but however, the door was locked from the inside, and Nancy's mom locked the door. And that was where Freddy took out Nancy's boyfriend. I don't want to go into details on what happened, but only thing I could say is, dang. But anyways, that's where later on in the film, the dad came over knowing he was a cop, trying to investigate what happened. Nancy called him and explained everything and what his job needed to be do, what she wanted him to do. He accepted and just said, go to bed. Everybody, that's what we've been trying to tell you, get some sleep. Everybody needs to. And so later on, Nancy was preparing everything in the house, and that's when I realized it looks awfully familiar to me, like straight up Home Alone. And the only thing I said was, Macaulay Culkin, eat your heart out. But anyways, she had everything prepped and ready. She made sure her mother was asleep before pulling Freddy out of her dream. She went to bed that night and said her prayers. But when she was in the boiler room, she spotted everything she was familiar with until she spotted her boyfriend's headphones that were burnt to a crisp. But when Freddy was chasing her, she jumped back to what looked like to be the outside of her house. But then she looked at her watch, realizing how much time she had left before pulling Freddy out of her dream. And she screamed and demanded where he was. Freddy popped up and he tackled her. More likely, she tackled him to the ground. She had him right where she wanted him until when she got pulled out of her, when she woke up, the only thing she pulled out what looked like to be part of the garden of the outside. Then she thought she was crazy. But boy was she wrong when Freddy popped out of nowhere. And then afterwards, she set the traps. She tried screaming out to her dad, but the cop on the outside realized the situation, trying to explain to her that everything's fine, everything's going to be under control. She wanted her dad. But when she went downstairs to try to break the front door window, screaming at the cops to get her dad. But then, when Freddy opened the door, he was met with a sledgehammer right to the gut. And I was like, Triple H, eat your heart out. But then, in Halloween fashion, Freddy fell down the edge of the ledge of the stairs. And when I looked at the fall, I was stunned at first. I was like, was there a mattress there or something? Or was the stairs a little safer? I don't know, but whatever it was, I was like stunned, like Jim Ross would say, good God Almighty, they killed him. As God is my witness, he is broken in half. But I was immediately stunned after seeing all of that. But anyways, when he fell down the stairs, Nancy realized that he was getting close. And she was then playing mind games with him, telling him, come on, Freddy, can't you catch me? But Freddy was getting mad to the point where he wanted to take her out. But then afterwards, he walked right into another trap, a light bulb filled with shotgun powder, and exploded right next to him. And I was like to myself, what is this, Home Alone? But then afterwards, the chase continued on, but she kept screaming to her dad, and the cop realized, I better get the lieutenant. So he ran into the house, and the chase went on downstairs into the basement. Freddy tried to play his same mind games with his glove, but then Nancy got the upper hand by throwing gasoline at him and set him on fire. But I was like, my God. But I was stunned like Jerry the King Lawler and Jim Ross during that time in the Inferno match between Undertaker and Kane. I was screaming like, put him out! Put him out! Put him out! But yet, anyways, as Freddy made it to the stairs, He was already down and out like a light, but by the time the cops got there along with her father, they tried to find out what was going on. Then there were flames all around the floors, and Freddy made it upstairs and took out Nancy's mother. But before that happened, Nancy hit Freddy from behind with a chair, and that was where Freddy took out Nancy's mother. It was so sad at the point, but then after the father left the room, that was where the door closed and Freddy arose. And Nancy letting Freddy know that that he was nothing, and she wanted her mother and her friends back. But after she turned around to walk away, as Freddy was about to get the upper hand and take out Nancy, but it looked like Freddy disappeared. But when Nancy walked out of the bedroom, it looked like she walked outside to see her mother okay and her friends okay. But when she got to the car, the ending was kind of shocking to me. And I believe it was one final scare. Like, the car had Freddy's sweater colors on the top of the hood of the car, well, the roof. And everything was locked up by itself, and Nancy was screaming out to her mother. And the car drove off with Nancy and her friends in it. And then the girls were still singing Freddy's song. And then Freddy came back with one more good scare to bring Nancy's mom back into the house. And to be honest, when I looked at it, it looked like a rag doll. But whatever it was, I was kind of stunned at the ending of the film. And at the ending credits, we could still hear Freddy's theme song still play. But overall, after the film, looking back at it now, I remember watching this so many times while growing up in a small town. A Nightmare on Elm Street is a film I will never forget. An overall view, I give this film a solid 10 out of 10. Because I believe Robert Englund pulled off an amazing performance along with Johnny Depp. And yet, I believe that A Nightmare on Elm Street has sparked a lot of great generation of horror movies. But yet, over the years, Freddy Krueger has been well known not just from his own TV show, but yet he had his own video game and his own holiday, last I checked, after one of the other films, which is known as Freddy Day. But it only lasted for a while. But anyways, that's gonna wrap it up for That's gonna wrap it up for episode 2 of A Halloween Nightmare on Friday the 13th. And I want to say this has been an incredible review so far. Stay tuned for another review for episode 3 as we review Friday the 13th and where it all started in the 1980s and where it all began. And the only thing I want to say is, folks, thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to this channel, turn on post notifications so you do not miss another amazing content like this. And I promise you, folks, there will be more episodes of A Halloween Nightmare on Friday the 13th to come. But anyways, thank you all so much for watching. And the only thing I want to say is, be sure to tell my friends I said, what's up?